What's going on, guys? So in this video today, I'm going to show you exactly how to perform a body weight squat. The reason I'm going to show you how to do a body weight squat today is because you can turn this into any type of squat you want if you have the basics down. There's no point in showing you how to do a barbell back squat or a front rack or a dumbbell or a blah, 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 blah if you don't have the basics yet. So in this video today, I'm going to show you how to properly execute a body weight squat, also known as an air squat. I'm going to show you the do's of what you should do, and I'm also going to show you the don'ts of some common mistakes that people make and they screw the squat up. When done correctly, the squat is an amazing exercise for your entire lower body and your core and your posture, but when done incorrectly, it can be bad for your knees, hips, and ankles. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing we're going to work on is the stance of the squat. You should have your stance roughly hip to shoulder width length apart, with your toes angled slightly outward. Now, each individual is different. Some people enjoy having a wider stance. Some people love having a narrower stance. Some people enjoy having their toes pointing forward. Others like having their toes pointed way out. Every single person is different in this regard. What's awesome and kind of tricky about the squat too is that each person has a different frame, which is going to equal a different stance for your squat. For example, if you have really long femurs, you might have a wider stance. If you have shorter femurs, you might have a closer stance. But my biggest tip is to just play around with the stance. The biggest mistakes when it comes to the stance is going way too far out wide or going way too narrow. If you're going way too wide, you're not going to activate the correct muscles. And if you're in way too narrow, you're not going to get the proper depth and you're not going to get the proper movement pattern. The second thing we're going to work on is the descent, you actually going down into the squat. What you should focus on is moving with your hips first. Those hips should go back first before you go down. The common mistake that I see people making is they are moving with their knees first. They're focusing on just getting down to the floor, and what they're doing is they're making their knees go way too far forward. They're putting all the stress on their knees and quads, and they're not properly loading their glutes and hamstrings along with it. So again, have those hips going back before you go down. Almost think of it like you're trying to sit on your heels. When you are descending, you should focus on having an upright torso or a torso that is at a greater angle than 45 degrees. The common thing that I see wrong with people's descents is they let their chest fall to their knees and they're not in a good posture. What this ends up doing is when you come up from the squat, you're using your back more than your actual hips and legs. Keeping a tall torso is going to keep your body working the right way by activating your glutes, hamstrings, and quads. Now let's move on to the hole. The hole is when you are at the very bottom of the squat. What should your stance look like? What should your posture look like? Well, your posture should be, again, that torso angle should be either upright or higher than a 45-degree angle. Again, we don't want our chest at our knees. The next thing we're looking for is your feet position. What are your feet doing on the ground? Ideally, you have your entire foot flat to the floor. A common mistake that's detrimental to your squat and your bone and joint health is having your squat either be completely on your heels or completely on your toes. We want your squat to be even throughout your foot. So when you're down in that position, I want you to imagine you are gripping the floor with your feet. You're bringing your toes and your heels together, gripping the floor almost like a tripod, keeping you balanced, and again, activating the proper muscles. This is also going to protect your joints, your hips, your knees, and your ankles so you don't get those sharp pains you might experience if you do a squat incorrectly. When we're also talking about the whole of the squat, we should talk about depth. Depth refers to how low your hips go in relation to your knees. Now, ideally, proper depth is right at hip level or slightly below hips. If you have very mobile ankles and hips, you shouldn't really have too big of an issue getting deep in the hole. However, if you don't have that mobility quite yet, it's okay to be just above your knees and slowly working your way down as you go. So now the fun part, coming up from the squat. Again, you are trying to keep your feet so they are gripping the floor, and all you're doing is reversing the movement. You're trying to drive your hips up and through using your quads, glutes, and hamstrings. When you stand up, you should be standing up nice and tall. There is no need to try to get your hips way all the way through, because when you have weight on your back, if you're doing a back squat or a front squat, the last thing you want is to get your hips out of position, because that will hurt your lower back so bad. Now, what are some ways you can use this exercise at home? Now, here's what's really awesome. No matter what type of variation of squat you do, the principles are the exact same of what I laid out in this video. You are still going to have the proper stance, the same stance. You're still going to have the same descent. You're still going to be the same in the hole, and you're still going to come up the same way. So no matter what type of squat we talk about, all those mechanics are the same. So there's 3 variations of the squat that I'm going to show you today. The first one is a chair squat or a box squat. What you're going to do is you're going to tap the box and then come all the way back up. To make this easier, have a higher box or a higher surface. To make this more difficult, have a lower surface. Once you feel comfortable with the box squat, then we're going to move into the air squat or the standard squat that I've showed you throughout this entire video. And the third one would be to either go up onto your toes after the squat is finished, or to do what's called a jump squat. Now, a jump squat, again, you are jumping in the air, exploding as high as you can, and then you're landing softly. Really important to land softly. If you're not landing softly, you're risking injuring your hips, knees, and ankles, and we want to make sure that you are healthy as possible when you are exercising. As far as sets and reps goes, it's completely up to you. You can do these for time. You can do sets of 5, 10, 15, 20 at a time. You can rest a little or a lot. This is something that's really fun because you get to experiment with it, especially depending on your skill level. But before you go trying to do a jump squat, I highly recommend you start at build 1. Work on the box squat at a higher height. Once you get good at that higher height, move the height down a little bit, maybe do a chair. Once you get good at that, maybe work on a lower surface. And then when you get good at those, you can do 10 solid reps, remove the chair, remove the object, and do 10 air squats or bodyweight squats. And then when you get good at those, maybe you can move on to the jump squat if you so choose. So that's gonna do it for this video, guys. If you liked the video, please make sure you like this and let me know what you learned in this video. What is your biggest takeaway? We'll see you guys in the next video.